Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Geraldine Taffy. For all those who are new here, thank you so much for stopping by, and for the returning subscribers, thank you so much for coming back. Thank you so much for showing me your support. We are currently at 37 subscribers, and guys, the goal is 1k. In January I think we only gained about three subscribers, I think. But we need to do better as we are getting into the month of February. So today is a Monday. I'm supposed to go to work. I'm about to leave for work. I'm already dressed up. This is the gear for work. I'm sure you can tell even from the hair, the outfit and everything else. But before I leave, I just decided maybe let me just comment and give my own view or my own interpretation of a notice that was issued last week by the Engineering Council of Zimbabwe. So ECZ issued a notice. I didn't see the notice personally, but you realize that most of my friends, my relatives, they were busy sending that notice to my inbox, and most of them were really worried, and I think they wanted to understand if my job is still secure. I think they wanted to understand if I'm also operating like within the legal regulations. So here's my comment on the notice. So before I comment, I'm just going to read the notice for the benefit of everyone. The notice reads, "It recently came to our notice that the professional designation of engineer has been abused by some rogue individuals masquerading as engineers. The public is advised that the use of the designation engineer is a special preserve of qualified engineers who are registered and compliant with the law in terms of engineering practice in Zimbabwe. According to the Engineering Council Act, Chapter 27 of 22, Part 4, Section 33, Subsection 1, no person other than a registered engineer shall A. hold himself or herself out to be an engineer, or B. use the designation or initials referred to in Section 32, Subsection 1, or any other name, title, description, or letters indicating that he or she is a registered engineer, whether by advertisement or description or in any document. Section 33, Subsection 3, any person who contravenes subsections 1 and 2 or engages on or knowingly accepts the services of a person who contravenes subsection 1 and 2 shall be guilty of an offense and liable to a fine not exceeding level 8 or imprisonment for a period not exceeding 1 year, or both such fine and such imprisonment." In a recent video that went viral on social media, Laston Machengo of Roy Eno Solar Tech went on to masquerade as an engineer in breach and flagrant violation of the law. Resultantly, ECZ is proceeding to lay charges against the culprit in terms of the statutory provisions of the law governing the practice of engineering in Zimbabwe. Let this be a warning to those that decide to violate the law. It won't be long before they are brought to the book. Issued by the Engineering Council of Zimbabwe. Alright, first and foremost, in terms of my relatives and my friends wanting to know if my job is secure, guys, no one's job is secure in this country, and mine is also not secure. We just live one day at a time by God's grace. We make it to the end of the week, end of the month, we get our salary, sometimes end of quarter, end of first half, second half, end of year, and this is just God's grace carrying us through, because when we are at work, we realize that so many times we see people losing their jobs. A lot of things are happening in the country, and the job market is not that stable, so no one is really secure when it comes to employment. Then the second comment that I have is on the requirements, on the notice itself. So I would like to believe that for anyone who studied honors in engineering, they already know the regulations, the rules of the Engineering Council of Zimbabwe. So I remember sometime, I think it was in first year, when you were taught about the ZIE rules, and the ZIE is basically Zimbabwe Institute of Engineers. They have rules and regulations. So one of the rules is that you are not allowed to use the initials PR Inch if you are not registered with ECZ. So ECZ is right there to say some people are abusing that title. You are not supposed to use PR Inch. So sometimes you can be a graduate of an engineering program. Like myself, I graduated with an engineering degree, but I'm not registered with ECZ, so I cannot use PR Inch, because PR simply means professional engineer. So during your training, you also need to go through a series of exams, a series of board interviews with the ECZ board that will then give you the license to operate as an engineer. But how come I'm not registered with ECZ yet I'm an engineer? So I realized most people were probably comparing this to medicine, pharmacy, and law. So with medicine, pharmacy, and law, you realize that those trades are protected. That's the first thing. They are protected in the sense that no matter how rich I get, I cannot just wake up and decide that I want to start my law firm if I'm not a registered lawyer. So they are protected. I cannot just wake up and say I want to start my my pharmacy if I'm not a registered pharmacist. So even if I want to go into partnership with a pharmacist, I'm only allowed to get 49% and the pharmacist gets 51%, regardless of who brought in more money or anything, because the trade is protected like that. But now when it comes to engineering, engineering is like a service that you offer to any type of business. So anyone who has money can start any type of operation that will then require an engineer. So the trade is not protected like that. So it's kind of unfair to say we should all be registered with ECZ, yet anyone who has money, even you yourself, you can become a millionaire and just decide to invest in something, then you employ me. But it's not fair. There's a gap there. Then the second thing, probably why with engineering the registration with ECZ wasn't that strict, is you realize that with law changes from state to state. The law in Zimbabwe is based on the constitution of Zimbabwe. So when you want to practice law in America, you have to go and understand the constitution in America. Then you have to sit for the bar exam in America. And I think in America, they even sit for different bar exams from state to state. So it's different because the constitutions for different nations are different. But with engineering now, the principles of engineering are universal. So I can just leave this country right now and go to Australia and I'm still an engineer without writing even a single exam. The only exam that I'll need is an English test. How beautiful is that? I only need an English test. So engineering is universal, but law is country specific. Law is constitution specific. Yes, there are the principles, the foundational principles are similar, but whilst they are similar, you operate within a certain jurisdiction, you operate within a certain constitution. And the other thing, the same goes with medicine and pharmacy and everything, because there are other drugs that are allowed maybe in America, but those drugs are not yet allowed in Zimbabwe. So you need to, when you go to America, you also need to write some sort of test so that you are familiar with what they use. There are so many practices that are used in Europe that we do not necessarily use here in Zimbabwe, and there are so many things that are deemed to be maybe medically wrong or it's medical fraud according to the laws of the Zimbabwe, but those things may actually be acceptable in the United Kingdom. So that's why with medicine, with pharmacy, you have to write a test when you move from Zimbabwe to the other country, and what's considered as maybe dangerous drugs here in Zimbabwe may not be considered as dangerous drugs out there. Like there's this common example where in what's that state? Okay, I think it's Latin America. I can give an example maybe of Barbados. where marijuana, mbanje, it's legal. But when you come to Zimbabwe, it's not legal. That's a dangerous drug. So because of that, when you're a pharmacist, when you're a doctor, you need to go and study and sit for an exam to just make you competent to practice your medicine in that state. So you are not entirely redoing like the full degree. No, you are not doing that. But it's just a sort of a socialization exam. I don't know what it is. But with engineering is universal, guys. Very, very universal. Nothing changes. Thermodynamics is thermodynamics. Fourier law is Fourier law. Equilibrium law is equilibrium law. Like, it's universal like that. So I don't need to sit for another exam. Then the other thing is there is also an issue of technicality loophole. So what do I mean by technicality loophole? What I'm saying here is as much as they have said we are not allowed to use the engineer title, I'm not sure in this case, but I think they were still speaking to those people who never learned engineering and those people who are using PRI. But if they are also referring to us, the technicality loophole comes in because most of us in industry, our titles don't even have the word engineer in it. My current title doesn't have the word engineer. So you realize that when you get to an organization, you find that one of the engineers is called maybe projects manager. The other one is called chief operational officer. The other one is being named maybe lab manager. The other one is being named plant manager, production manager, or production superintendent. So you barely find people with an engineer in their title. So if they say we can't use the engineer in our titles, it's fine. I will just continue doing my job because I'm not using that title, engineer. But in this case, they haven't said I can't use my degree from use it. I can still use it. So it's okay. And particularly for me, I'm a metallurgical engineer. I studied metallurgical engineering at the University of Zimbabwe. But some organizations prefer to call a metallurgical engineer, while some just prefer to call a metallurgical engineer a metallurgist. So remember, you can hear this. When I just say I'm a metallurgist, there is no engineer in there. So technicality loophole, I'm a metallurgist. Who said I'm a metallurgical engineer, guys? I'm just a metallurgist. So I don't think this is something that can be implemented like no. And for it to be implemented, they also need to protect us in a way or the other. Because as it is, also there is an issue of privatization of organizations. Most of the organizations that we are working for are private organizations. So in those private organizations, there is no strict monitoring of how many engineers do you have here and how about the engineer-technician ratio. Because when we were learning, we were told that the ratio of engineers to technicians should be 1 to 3. So for every engineer, you need at least 3 technicians who will be giving you input into your day-to-day work. But as it is, I'm an engineer, I only have 1 technician. I only have 1 technician, and sometimes most times in fact, I'm also in the plant running around trying to understand where is the problem, trying to identify any gaps, any bottlenecks. Why? Because I only have 1 technician who can't do all the run around. So sometimes I'm an engineer technician, so because no one regulates that, why would you then want to come and regulate my usage of the title engineer? Because I'm qualified. Secondly, because I've been saying a lot of things. Then the other thing is registering with ECZ when we were in college. It is something that was encouraged, not mandatory. It was encouraged. We were never mandated to register with ECZ. We were encouraged to register with ECZ because that's a local board. However, as an engineer, I can also register with a board from Australia. I can also register with ECZA, because most engineers in Zimbabwe that I know are registered with ECZA. That is the Engineering Council of South Africa. I can do that. So we were never really mandated to register with ECZ, but rather encouraged to register with ECZ. And whenever you see the job adverts for engineers, they state that being a member of ZIE is an added advantage. It's not a prerequisite, but it's an added advantage. So when something is being implied as an added advantage, yet the exams are very difficult, the board is just too difficult, the cost of the subscriptions are difficult, the cost of getting that license is difficult, only for something that is an added advantage. Why should I go to those lengths? Then the other thing is you realize that on the requirements, like I mentioned, for law, for me to open a law firm or for me to become maybe a name partner, I also need to be a lawyer. But in engineering, for me to become maybe a shareholder at an engineering firm, I just need to have money, guys. So as long as the system is still like that, it's not balanced, and it's unfair to say engineers cannot operate as engineers since they are not registered with ECZ. Then the other thing is, I feel like if this is to be implemented, there's going to be so much brain drain. So much brain drain because people will just start migrating to Australia. Like, there are so many jobs in Australia. People will just start migrating to Australia. In Australia, you need like 7K to 8K to process all your paperwork so that you can go to Australia, of which any engineer who is currently practicing, if they really want to go to Australia, then they can surely raise that amount in less than a year, or in a year rather. They can raise that amount. So there's going to be serious brain drain if they decide to make sure that everyone who is not an ECZ licensed engineer cannot operate. Then the other thing is they are actually giving the employers the power to take engineers out of employment, because remember, these are private organizations. So for private organizations, they can simply say, you know what, it's just we don't need engineers, we'll run with our technicians. And even if you do a skills audit, as long as their manifesto or their scope is saying we need a technician here, we need an assistant here, we need an apprentice here, and you do a skills audit and you find a technician, an assistant, an apprentice, and you don't find an engineer, you cannot even charge that organization. Why? Because they never mention the need for an engineer in their scope. So there are a lot of loopholes when it comes to trying to regularize the engineers council, and this is something that is like, this is a global issue. There is no regularization of that trade. If you are qualified, if you are degreed, you pass, you graduate, you are an engineer, guys. You are just not a PR engineer, professional engineer, and you are not licensed, so you are not supposed to use those initials. And the other thing is, if you are a PR engineer, like when you have a license from ECZ, if someone calls you by name, let's say you just say Geraldine, I have the power to sue you, to say, this girl or this man or this woman did not call me engineer Geraldine. I have that power if I'm licensed with ECZ. But if I'm not licensed with ECZ, I don't have the power to sue you to say kuti sales quantity engineer. That's the other difference. So the ECZ license, at the present time, my engineers, we've just been looking at it as some flex. But flex, you know, I'm a PR engineer, but not necessarily as something that is needed for me to get employment. However, on the bright side of things, if ECZ is going to make sure that everyone who practices engineering in Zimbabwe does have an ECZ license, then it's going to imply that it becomes easy for regularization of salaries. Because you know what, with salaries, some engineers are getting so much, some engineers are getting so little, and some are just average. So regularization of salaries will be an advantage to those who are earning so little, though a disadvantage to those who are earning like exorbitant salaries, but it will be of help to regularize those salaries on the brighter side. Although I think implementation of this will take a very long time, and we'll also see the economy and the nation having a lot of brain drain. People will start migrating to Australia, people will start migrating to West Africa, people will migrate even to Zambia, and most people who have the PR status are actually in academics. They are lecturers, and so if those people are going to move from academics to the industry, who is going to be lecturing the incoming engineers? So it's going to be a difficult situation altogether to manage. Then the other thing is, now particularly for me, I'm a metallurgist. So being a metallurgist, the other thing is we also have another board that is specifically for mining and metallurgical engineers. So any mining engineer, metallurgical engineer, we have a board which is called SAIM, that is Southern African Institute of Mining and Metallurgy. This is for Southern Africa. So for anyone who is a mining or metallurgical engineer, SAIM makes more sense. Trust me, you will realize that those mining and metallurgical engineers are mostly registered with SAIM. Almost all of them are registered with SAIM, but probably none or a few are registered with ECZ. But SAIM makes more sense. And the other thing, advantage of being registered with ECZ, SAIM, or these bodies is just some adverts are advertised to members of those bodies first. But it doesn't mean that if you're not a member of that board, you won't get a job. Then the other thing is on the requirements for us to climb the ladder. Let's say I want to end up becoming a mine manager. The requirements according to the statutory instruments in Zimbabwe, the requirements for me to become a mine manager is not even a metallurgy degree, it's not even a mining degree, but rather it's a full blasting license. So what it means is, even if an accountant comes and intends for a blasting company until he or she attains a full blasting license, that accountant, that lawyer, that sheikh practitioner, that HR practitioner, as long as you have a full blasting license, you can also become a mine manager. So you see, guys, when I'm saying this trade is not protected, so you really can't say I can't practice when you then say the person who is going to be the topmost boss, the most senior person at an organization, can have any degree plus a full blasting license. Ladies and gentlemen, you don't need to have any degree for you to get a full blasting license. For you to get a full blasting license, you should be over 21 years of age, a Zimbabwean citizen, and that blasting experience. Then you go for exam. There is no need for O level, there's no need for A level for you to get a full blasting license, guys. 21 years of age, that's the only requirement. So you are telling me that the most senior person in my organization, the only legal requirement is a full blasting license. So that person can then be so what ends up happening is that those who have full blasting license but do not have maybe O level, A level, they may not get to that position due to other technicalities, because with these adverts, you need to be a critical thinker, you need to be someone who is strategic for you to get into that positions. So at the end of the day, it then becomes easy for someone who have been working in that field, someone who have been working in senior positions already, to take on that position of a mine manager. Otherwise, it's not a requirement that someone should be an engineer, or it's not a requirement that someone should be degreed. There is no legal requirement that says degreed here in Zimbabwe. The legal requirement says full blasting license, and you can get your full blasting license. You can get your mine blasting license, I think, within a year. Then after that year, you need is it 2 years? Okay, it's almost 2 years, but it's actually measured in number of shifts. But considering that sometimes we take days off, we go on breaks and everything, so it comes close to 2 years. That's the only requirement for a mine manager. Then at that same mine, then you say the engineer who is like 10 levels below the mine manager should be registered, otherwise he or she cannot practice. Is that fair? Anyway, this being said, this doesn't constitute as legal advice. Please, engineers, go out there and get your ECZ licenses if you really want to be employed. And also, I think this law can actually make life difficult for those who are working in parastatals, like maybe ZPC, because that's a parastatal, unlike the private organization. So normally parastatals are quick to inherit and they are quick to adopt these changes to a statutory instrument. So it's going to be a bit difficult for those who are working in parastatals. Otherwise, I don't think most people will be affected, and I still think this is the same rule that was always there, the same rules that we were taught. We are not supposed to use that PRI Inch title. We are not supposed to injure the reputation of another engineer, otherwise you will be taken out of practice. You are not supposed to do things that will just devalue another engineer. So I still feel these are the same rules, but most people didn't know about the rules because they didn't necessarily study engineering. But for anyone who studied engineering, these rules are already on our fingertips. We know them for sure. You will never ever catch me writing PR Inch in front of my name. No, you will never ever catch me doing that. And I will also not punish you for not calling me engineer. Trust me, I won't. Then for the guy who was mentioned in that letter, I don't know this guy. I haven't even looked him up, but I'm sorry to him. I'm sorry he was caught up in all this, but I just hope that he at least have an honors degree in engineering. That way I think it will be lighter. But if he was using PR Inch, then I don't know how we can save him. But that's it. So please note, these are just my thoughts. It's not legal, so if you have issues with your title, if you feel you want to use your title, please go ahead and consult your lawyer. Like I mentioned, I'm a metallurgist. Did you hear that? I said metallurgist, I didn't say metallurgical engineer. So like I mentioned, I'm a metallurgist, so I can get away with this. And also, the other thing is, the panel for Engineering Council of Zimbabwe, it doesn't have enough mining engineers and metallurgists to actually quantify and measure the amount of work that I'm doing. So I feel SIM is enough. And I think they don't have enough metallurgists and mining engineers on their panel because most of those professionals are registered with SIM. So yeah, that being said, guys, go and get your licenses. Let's go and get our licenses before it's too late. We need these jobs. And this being said, I didn't say anything chiri wrong panapa. Ndangotaura pfungwa dzangu, and this is content, and I'm not advising you kuti muchikore mutemo. You don't have to do that because inini ndataura zvandikufunga kuti zvinoshanda kwandiri. Bye. Anyway, if you got to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for supporting this metallurgist. And now the engineering title, guys. It was quite only my financial engineer. I don't know how ZIE is going to work on that one, but hey, ma quick. Kwani ma financial engineers, kwani ma I don't know, all sorts of engineers. You know what I'm talking about. Bye for now.